We're finally ready for the first step towards a comfortable and efficient house by installing this mountain of ROCKWOOL insulation. We're not quite done ductwork yet, but electrical roughing is complete and inspected, so we're good to fill in the exterior walls. We might get into some durability testing too.
Let's just see what happens.
This is the first of 4 videos that will cover insulation from top to bottom in our house, so there's much more yet to come.
Welcome to Mount ROCKWOOL. When I started putting our building plans together more than 2 years ago, I did a deep dive into insulations, trying to figure out what kind of insulation we wanted, and I landed on ROCKWOOL. There are a number of reasons I really like this product, and there are a number of other reasons I really didn't want to go with competing products. I'll probably do a future video on all that reasoning, but a few of the reasons I really liked ROCKWOOL and wanted it in our build is that it's very resistant to water, moisture, mildew. Termites hate this stuff. It's very dense. It's extremely good at soundproofing.
I'm in a store and I'm singing. I'm in a store and I'm singing.
It fills the full stud cavity. It's really easy to work with and cut and shape.
It's quite resistant to fire, more on that later.
And you can install it with normal clothing with minimal protective gear. As we were leading up to installation, we reached out to ROCKWOOL to tell them about our project. They were excited to hear about it and asked if they could get involved. And so this morning, we're gonna have a couple special guests to help install this. We'll film some details on the install and get some tips and tricks from them. And we're just gonna hang out too. I think we got some lunch planned to grill over the fire. It should be a good day. Today we're getting started on the walls. That's this R23 comfort back going everywhere. The I-joist floor platform will get R24. It's a little bit thicker, and the size we got is also meant for steel studs, so the bats are a little bit wider, and that's because of that I-joist. Those thin webs make actually a little bit larger than a traditional 16 on center dimensional stud gap. So the R24 will be perfect for the floor platform, and then right behind me is all this R38. Those are 9.5-inch thick bats. Those will go in the upstairs ceiling, both in the rafter bays and the flat ceiling on top. The flat ceilings will get an additional layer of R15 for a total of an R53 ceiling.
To estimate how much ROCKWOOL we needed, of course I made a spreadsheet that let me input the number of open stud bays and their length and output the number of bags and pallets of ROCKWOOL I needed for each product type. This tool really helped me dial in an accurate material estimate, so I thought it would be a good thing to put on our website. Link in description. The delivery was about half of a 53-foot semi-trailer, which is not able to make the turn into our driveway, so we had to unload at the road. Whoever the novice was running the skid steer got a little frisky on the controls, and there may or may not have been a slight unloading mishap. But a little bit of elbow grease and several truck and trailer loads up the driveway later, we got all of the insulation piled neatly in the backyard. And it turns out that skid steer novice likes to dance.
We're gonna start on these garage walls. Just one little quick tip that we realized when we were doing our electrical rough-in was to run these wires at 47 inches above the bottom plate. That's because a bat of ROCKWOOL is 47 inches tall, so you don't have to cut it around this wire. I wasn't able to do this everywhere, but where I could, I ran it at this height. That way we can do a full height bat beneath it. We'll do a full height bat against the top plate, and then there's gonna be like a little 11-inch section here in the middle. Brought some swag with them and some awesome insulation tools as well. This is branded the Saber. We're used to these little guys here, these little red knives, and they do get the job done fairly well for the R23, but for thicker insulation like the R38 comfort bat, the Saber is what you need.
The ROCKWOOL guys showed us the quickest way to open bags without scoring the face of the bats. Just slice the bag at each end and lightly score across the front. The pressure of the bats expanding will pop open the top of the bag.
That is so cool.
Oh, interesting. Fluffing it up.
It helps to fluff the corners of the bat out with a quick tap of the knife right after opening because the bag does compress the bats. Getting started on the first wall, the strategy was to do the top bats first, putting one side back into the cavity and then carefully compressing and pushing the other side in to fit snug. We used the face of the studs as sort of a hand guide to make sure we weren't over compressing the insulation in the cavity.
Safety glasses, Alex.
I only have one glove on too. So let me see how you're doing it. So you're tucking it in one corner, and then do you use your hand to compress the
and then
corner a little bit? Okay. This is the first time you've ever installed insulation, Elena?
Yes. Learning.
You know, I don't think I've done it before this either.
Like this? That's kind of how you do it?
Look at that. That's a bat if I've ever seen it.
It's a little over compressed at the edge, but that's okay.
If you accidentally overcompress a little, you can just stick a knife in along the edge to fluff it back out. Just keep an eye out for wires.
You do not want to be sabering through a wire.
At least nothing is live.
That worked really well though. That worked really well.
Yeah, that did work well.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Those little gaps in the corners kind of were like a pet peeve of mine.
When you get to a 3-stud or California corner, you'll need to take out the section of bat where the 1 corner stud makes the cavity 1.5 inches thinner. It's easy enough to plunge cut about 5.5 inches in from the edge and 1.5 inches deep, then cut into the side like you're filleting a fish.
Look at that fillet. Beautiful.
Little shake to work it back into the corner and on to the next.
Wow, that fits in there really nice. You got to
Like
get
a puzzle
top
piece.
shot.
When we measured out for any obstruction, like electrical boxes, we cut the bat 1/4 inch smaller than the actual box in each dimension so there was a snug compression fit around it. You can plunge cut with the knife and pull out a perfect chunk anywhere you need to.
That's amazing how that stuff cuts. It's like cheese.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, let's try it out. That might be a little small.
You think I'm precise? You should hear some of the stuff that Elena comes up with when we're doing carpentry style stuff where you're cutting something to fit. I mean, she's like 30, she'd get out the 32nd of an inch when it comes to this kind of stuff.
This is why females
She needs to be on
struggle.
millimeters.
Yeah.
Here's what it looks like after install, no gaps around the box. For these areas where a wire comes into the stud bay a little, just a quick score in the bat is all you need to get the wire nested into the bat with no gaps.
While Dan and Elena continue with the normal bats, I'm going to cut some 11.5 inch pieces for the middle here. They're a little bit larger than what the actual space is because we want to get a little bit of a compression fit in there to make sure there's no air gaps. One air sealing detail to mention is our lighting blocks here. So I put this Romex connector in. That connector was put on the box before we put the box on the wall and before we did siding or electric rough-in wiring. I'm coming back now after the fact and air sealing this from both the inside and out with some Big Stretch. Here's that from the inside. So I use Big Stretch, which is a really flexible sealant. It will stay flexible, which is important for when I'm messing around with the wires when it comes to finally dress the box up. We're coming along here. We're gonna do a little bit of floor platform insulation as well. We don't have the ductwork completely done yet, so we won't insulate in those areas. So I'm gonna set the scaffold up and start just scanning the joist space for any excess sawdust that's left over from when we drilled all of our duct penetrations through the floor platform. Vacuum all those off, and then we will be installing this R24 comfort bat. It is a true 6 inches thick, and it's 16.25 inches wide. So that makes up for the little bit of extra space that arises from the thinner eye joist at 16 inch on center, as opposed to regular dimensional lumber at 16 on center, which has a 14.5 inch gap.
We have a ton of footage with tons of details about the floor platform, so I'm going to split that out into a separate video for clarity's sake.
All right, Elena and Chris have been up here rocking it. Rock pun intended. Look at this. This is what you call a grade 1 install behind our ENT box. That's amazing. Chris has literally split the bat in half, and we have a 2-part bat, one behind the wires, one in front. Chris, how do you feel about that?
I feel good about it because, you know, with the friction fit, it'll still hold in place even though it's not attached to the, you know, the back side of it now. So
Fantastic.
it works.
Fantastic. Chris misses calling as an insulation installer. Good job.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Appreciate it.
It's the start of day 2. Yesterday, we got a decent amount done, probably 15–20% of the entire house, several walls, and about 1/3 of the ceiling in the garage. We did a lot of chatting and filming and had a good long lunch break, so it was overall a really awesome, kind of chill day, and we still got a good bit of work done. This was the wall Chris was working on most of the day yesterday, and I gotta say, I'm really impressed with the installation quality. This stuff is like flat as can be. And check this out, even around this light switch, there was a lot of wires and a lot going on behind here, this piece of blocking. It is like a jigsaw puzzle around this thing. That's incredible. Professional installation contractors really are speedy, but that does come at the expense of some neatness in some areas. There's a lot of just manhandling the stuff and just shoving it in the walls and getting on to the next piece. I'm trying to avoid that on this project because it's like one of those things, you only have one chance to do it. Like, take the time and the care to gently
pat the bat into the stud cavity and get it to fill fully, no gaps around the edges. That sort of detail does take time and energy, but I think it's totally worth it, especially on an owner build like this where we're not under any crazy tight deadline to get done and just get on to the next phase of the project. It is so strange though, even though only like probably not even a third of this front room in the garage is done, it is notably quieter. Like when I close the garage door, you don't hardly hear any birds outside. There's this weird ringing in your ears. It's like when you're in a sound chamber and it's just a little bit too quiet. Once we get all the insulation in the house, I can't imagine what it's gonna even sound like. It will sound like I'm literally in a film studio recording some of these videos. It's going to be so darn quiet. Of course, once we put the sheetrock up, that will go away a little bit and we'll get more of the echo back, but it's still incredible how quiet it is with just a couple walls of insulation in.
This is gonna be interesting. Okay, it looks like it's gonna work. Woohoo! I think we're gonna have to lift it off. See, primary bedroom is ready for sleeping. Nice big bed of ROCKWOOL. Wow, 38 is like significantly lighter.
After helping unload and figuring out some of the ceiling details, the ROCKWOOL guys had to head back to their real job, so we were back on our own. We moved back downstairs to keep moving on the walls.
We're working on the back wall here by this bathroom. Elena wants to explain a little bit about what she's doing around some difficult blocking.
Here we have some blocking that's supporting this interior wall, so it makes it a little bit tricky to get the insulation behind here. I'm cutting a small section to fill in behind this blocking here. Then I'm going to use a full bat between this piece of blocking and this piece of blocking. Then I'll use scrap pieces again behind here, full piece, and then scrap, and then full piece. So this is going to be the most efficient way rather than ripping down a full sheet of insulation and then piecing it together. It does take a little bit more time, but it's an easier way to do it.
That's a grade 1 install, as they say. No gaps.
We'll see once I get it done. The goal for today is to get all of the walls done in the garage, and I'm really excited about getting the safe and sound installed in this bathroom because it's gonna start feeling like a separate space. It's just kind of felt like a closet, and every time people walk past it, we have to explain what it is. But then we can actually put a toilet and sink in here and start using it.
Safe and Sound is ROCKWOOL's interior acoustic insulation product, so it's not really necessarily meant for thermal isolation, but rather acoustics, and it's a little bit more dense than the normal comfort bat to make that happen. We're gonna cover the Safe and Sound install as a whole in a separate video, but today we are gonna try to get some installed in this 2x4 wall cavity in the bathroom down here.
18, so I'm gonna cut that to 18.25. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then cut it like a piece of bread.
Beautiful piece of stone bread.
that you don't want to eat. Cool.
Not a gap in sight. That's a grade 1 install right there.
As the install progresses, we do accumulate some scraps, but we're trying to use them where we can. So there are some blocks that are a little bit bigger or more substantial, and we're trying to put these to use when we can.
Fun fact about ROCKWOOL is it's also recyclable. Unfortunately, there's no program set up for, people like me and Elena to bring this back, but at the factory, which we had the pleasure of going to take a tour of, they are able to basically reuse all the offcuts that they make during the manufacturing process, and they feed them right back into the start of the process. The last major wall we have to do down here in the garage is this center interior wall. It's a 2x6 wall that holds up the floor platform above us, and honestly, we don't really need to insulate it, except I'm gonna have a wood shop back here. So I'm gonna be running table saws and all sorts of power tools that are gonna be noisy. And just to add another level of sound isolation, we're gonna go ahead and insulate it.
Before we get started on it, we do have some cleanup. We're gonna have to move some things out of the way. We also have a cross brace across this wall that we've been storing things on. So we're probably gonna take that down, and then we'll get to work on it.
Yeah, this has become like the tool storage haven. We've just been hanging all kinds of stuff here, and It's finally time to relocate that so we can get some insulation in this wall and then eventually sheetrock on it. A little technique that I've sort of developed with the outlets is when there's multiple things to cut around in one bat like there is here, I just cut it at the top of the first one, cut the whole bat, and then I can easily square around where I need to, and then the next bat I can just start fresh here and only worry about this one. And I found that especially on the exterior walls where I don't have access to both sides, it leaves a really nice, tight envelope around each outlet so that I'm not putting too much gap in trying to like force the insulation behind the box when I can't really see what's going on back there. This will come flush with the top of the box. Then I can start with a fresh bat up there. 4 inches deep. Typically, you don't have the luxury of being on both sides at once. Actually makes it a little bit more challenging in some regards. Make sure we're balanced in the wall. Coming to this vertical pipe now, it's our kitchen sink drain. This is how I'm handling that. Took a couple scraps to infill around the bottom. I'm gonna put an access door there, so I don't really need it to be that tight. I'll probably end up removing more of that, but then up a little bit further, I found another scrap that was like just the right width to go in here, and then I carved out a little channel in the side of it for that guy to fit in there. And then I made a mating piece out of a full length and basically did the same thing. If I can get this out here. Just cut that channel out and that should slip right around that pipe. If I didn't know any better, you wouldn't even know a pipe was hidden in there. Hopefully this cuts down on the sound of the water coming through the pipe as well.
Wherever I wasn't able to run wires at increments of 47 inches, I found it was easier to cut a bat all the way through at the wire location to make install easier. Slicing the bat partially and having to work it over the wire took a little bit longer, and it was hard to see on the back side if it was truly all the way over the wire.
One of ROCKWOOL's big selling points is the fire resistance, so I thought I have all these scraps. I should probably do a test of this just to make sure and keep them a little bit honest here. This is just a scrap bat cutoff that we use down here and a propane torch. Let's just see what happens. Definitely does not want to light on fire. There is a little bit of charring. All right, there's a good minute or so of direct blowtorch flame contact. Not that that's a realistic scenario for any insulation, but
No smoke, no flame, just a little bit of charring was the end result.
we're nearing the end of the walls down here, and one of these last stud bays has a special situation that I thought I should note. It's a little bit wider than the regular 14.5-inch width. It's because it's the bay between our garage doors. To keep the 16 on center layout with this middle stud here, the wall is only like 3 feet wide. But to keep that 16 on center layout, it would have needed a stud like right here, and there would have been a small gap, maybe like a 2-inch gap. That's all well and good, except the anchoring down here. The bolts have a minimum and maximum distances they can be from the end of that plate, and the stud would have fallen directly over top that bolt. So I just decided during framing to leave it out, and we would deal with the consequences later, and this is one of them. The normal stud bay width doesn't fit. So this is probably like 3 inches wider than a normal, like maybe like 16, 17, I haven't measured it. But we're gonna basically have to run the bats this way and just cut them to length. There's a couple rafter situations like this up top in the attic. We'll have to do something similar as well, but just thought I would let you know. I put that in there and didn't realize that it wasn't full width until I put that in there, and that's what happens. I would like to highlight the cutout on this one though. I thought I did a pretty decent job on that. Box plus wires, box plus wires. So that wraps up the first floor wall insulation, both interior and exterior, except for those little areas right above that garage door, because there's too much HVAC junk on the floor to be able to access that. So I'm gonna wait till we get the back garage ceiling done. We're gonna move the HVAC junk into there and then finish that up. Here's another situation where the interior partition wall meets the exterior wall, and we got to get insulation behind here. I've tried just sort of shoving a full bat, and it does work, but it's pretty rough on the bat and there's no way it's fully filling that void. So what I found is a better way to do this is to two-piece it lengthwise. So I'll cut a bat that's the width of the edge of this 2x4 to over here, which is about halfway. Put that in this way, slide it over and flush up against, and then use the remainder of that bat to just go straight in. And that way it definitely fills the cavity a little bit more. I'll show you some close-ups. Here's the bottom, which I've already done it with, and it totally fills all the voids. There's no real stress on the bat, and it gets to all the bat corners. The one thing that kind of peeves me with any sort of installation bat is this back corner here. It feels like I can never get it all the way closed. When you push these in, it kind of bends that back corner back, and no matter how hard you really try to work it in there, there's always going to be a tiny gap there. So that's my one complaint about bats in general, is it seems like no matter how hard you try, you can't get a perfect installation. Fills the back of that cavity nicely. No real gaps. Work the second bat in and we are done. Easy as that. Similar to these situations with getting insulation behind the walls, I'm finding that two-piecing it around wires is a better peace of mind for me anyway, that I'm getting insulation fully behind the wire. Another technique was called pack manning, where you slit the back side of it and then sort of eat the wire with the insulation, and it works again. I think that's what 99% of people in the situation do, but I feel like I'm very anal with this kind of stuff, and I like to be able to see the fact that the insulation is sitting in the corners as best as it can anyway, and that it's fully behind the wire and I didn't just crush the insulation up against the wire. This kind of stuff that's going on behind the wall are stuff that I really want to pay a lot of attention to. It's easy to touch up paint on like a baseboard or fill in a nail hole a little bit later that's exposed, but you can't redo the insulation once you put it in. So I'm willing to take the extra time to really be careful about this. I'm gonna do the same thing when we move on to the attic and the roof insulation, because that's probably even more critical than the walls. But that's my basic philosophy when it comes to building. Pay attention to the stuff that you cannot really change later without some major amount of work, stuff that you never wanna change in the future. Insulation is one thing, framing, foundation, air sealing, things that will really impact the long-term performance of your building. Light switches are one of the main culprits of cold spots in walls, so I'm taking extra special care to detail around these. This is sort of a multi-piece. I have a whole separate front piece, stuffed a piece in the back, a piece behind this block. The goal is just to try to get this as continuous as possible all the way behind the light switch, and then I'm gonna do the same around the service loops. These, by the way, I put in when wiring, just in case we have a little oopsie or anything up in the box, we have a little bit of excess wire to pull back in. But that does come with extra stuff in the wall that we just gotta keep to the side or cut the insulation around it. Like I said before, in general, keeping the wiring tight to the walls helps with a really nice, neat install, especially when we're going across stud bays. Going nice and level and perpendicular to the studs makes cutting insulation much easier. Some spaces are just way too tight to get a bat, so here's my technique, just shoving scraps in with the handle.
The last of the exterior insulation on the walls was right near the stairs, and now you can see why, because accessing it has been a little bit challenging. So we're on the last 2 or 3 pieces here, except for some of that insulation that's gonna have to go in the ceiling. Alex built that little platform that's sitting on the stairs. It's screwed to the stairs so it won't move. And then there is another platform next to it, which I was working off of previously to get some of the stuff down in the corner over there, and then all around that little door. Alex is gonna give me the next measurement. I'll cut it and he will place it in its spot.
Okay, 19.5 and 41.5.
Right, here's the 19.5. Alex changed the ladder orientation a little bit because he realized that the top of the ladder was initially interfering with where the insulation was going to go. So now it's going all the way up to that top wall, and while he climbs this ladder, I'm going to stand down there and hold it and make sure nothing bad happens. If I scream, jump to the platform.
The last piece of our exterior wall insulation puzzle is above our headers here. We have double 2x headers everywhere in a 5.5 inch deep wall, which means there is 2.5 inches of free space over top all of our doors for insulation. We have two options. We can either rip down a bat to 2.5 inches to fit in that space, and we did do that on a couple of the garage ones. But for these ones up here, I had an idea. Since we have exactly 2.5 inches of space, we might as well use a 2.5 inch comfort board, which is precisely that thickness. Comfort board is a much denser, harder version of ROCKWOOL, and this stuff is like, it's like a brick. It is like really solid, and you really cannot friction fit this too much at all because it just won't budge. It's like really, really difficult to compress. This is the R10 version. This is 2.5 inches thick. So I'm gonna do my best to cut this to exactly the right size for these headers and friction fit that in. There is much less room for error when cutting this stuff as opposed to regular comfort board because this just does not compress. I saw Kyle from R&R Buildings has a tool for this. It's a table for cutting this insulation, both comfort board and bat. And it did seem pretty neat. I actually looked it up. It's like $1,000 table, so not really a one-time thing, but cool nonetheless. Let's see how well I measured this one. I can't even put it in diagonally because that corner just is so freaking solid. Be a little bit tight on one side. All right, there we're getting there. Got to be careful that this doesn't protrude at all for the drywall because ain't no drywall compressing this thing. That's a snug fit. R10 and no air gaps, that is for sure. Holy smokes. Oh man, that is satisfying. That is oddly satisfying. That is just snug. What a thing of beauty. Man, that is beautiful. With those headers done, we are at the finish line for the exterior walls. We have just a little bit to do underneath the dormer windows in the kitchen and the bedroom, but we're waiting on that until we finish the ceiling so that if we have any extra ceiling scraps or leftovers, we can put them in the tiny little section of roof in front of the dormer windows to keep that attic a little bit more temperate. We'll wait till the very end to finish up the last bit of the floor platform, putting bats underneath the HVAC that we just finished all the supply runs for. And we're gonna be putting a layer of Sega Myrex vapor control layer on that garage ceiling. So that's the plan for the very last of our wall and floor platform. I think you've seen enough of it by now to get the idea. We do still have the attic insulation to do left and our interior wall soundproofing insulation. So more to come on that. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.